Alright, welcome to lesson 5.09, Looking Ahead. This lesson covers pages 961 to 963. In the only book in American history to have made history while running for president. That is the American Odyssey, our textbook. Our goals for today, we want to identify the candidates and major issues of the election of 2008. We also want to explain why the primaries and national election of 2008 were groundbreaking. And lastly, we want to assess the major issues facing the United States in the year 2009 and beyond. So those are our goals for today. So, to the 2008 election. Going into this election, we had just come out, or we're just finishing the second term of George W. Bush. So he was elected president in 2000, re-elected in 2004, and now his term is ending. He can no longer run, right? He can no longer be president. And his vice president at the time, a guy by the name of Dick Cheney, he had no interest in running for president. So and again, Bush and Cheney, Republicans. So for the Republican Party, it was up to them to kind of nominate someone new or new to the presidential scene, I guess. But somebody to kind of come up and be that person for their party, right? To pick up the mantle. And that person is going to be longtime senator from Arizona, John McCain. John McCain just recently passed away, maybe like 2 years ago. But John McCain served a long time in the Senate. So he runs for president in the year 2008. And McCain, although a Republican, was kind of known as being a maverick, meaning he was sometimes willing to split with his party on key issues. So that's generally considered a good thing when running for president, showing that you're able to kind of work both sides of the aisle. He also had a broad cross-section appeal to voters. He was a veteran, had previously been a prisoner of war while he served. Again, long-time senator in the public eye for a long time, very experienced. And in what most consider to be a surprise move, John McCain chose the relatively unknown governor of Arkansas, or governor of Alaska at the time, Sarah Palin. Here's Sarah Palin down here, as his running mate. So, we today currently have a female vice president, who was the first female vice president. Had McCain been elected, Sarah Palin would have been the first female vice president. So that could have made history at that time. On the Democratic side, there was not a clear candidate going into this election. In fact, there was an intense Democratic primary election to choose who would be the Democratic nominee, and the two choices were between Hillary Clinton. Again, she was the first lady when her husband was president, Bill Clinton. And after that, after her time as first lady, she actually was elected to the Senate from New York. They moved to New York, and she served in the Senate for a while. So Hillary Clinton, well known, definitely had the name recognition, kind of definitely the front runner going into this race. And then the other candidate was Barack Obama, who was relatively unknown. He was a first-term senator from Illinois, but he gained popularity by giving the keynote speech at the 2004 Democratic National Convention. In that election, that was when George W. Bush was running for re-election. The Democratic nominee was a guy by the name of John Kerry. Obama, again, I don't think anybody in national politics, anybody outside of Chicago, had ever heard his name in 2004. But he gives this speech at that convention, and it kind of just blows him up in popularity. It was a very well-received speech, and people were like, this is a guy to watch. And so in the wake of that, he runs for Senate from Illinois, wins that seat, and so he serves 2 years as a senator before this election, and now he's running for president. And what was historic about this primary race for the Democratic Party was that it included a woman and an African American. So no matter which of these two candidates won the primary, one of them was going to make history, either being the first African American as a major nominee as a nominee from a major party in a presidential election, or Hillary Clinton as a woman in that same role. So either way, it was going to be historic. In what was a very close primary race between Clinton and Obama, ultimately Barack Obama emerged as a winner and would become the Democratic candidate for president, and Obama would choose Senator Joe Biden as his running mate. Senator Joe Biden, kind of like McCain being a longtime senator as a Republican, Biden, I think even longer, had served in the Senate as a Democrat. So for number 3 here, what was so groundbreaking and historic about this election is that neither an incumbent president nor a sitting vice president was a candidate. This was the first time that had happened in 50 years. So again, you didn't have anybody running for re-election because Bush couldn't, and you didn't have the vice president running for election because Dick Cheney didn't want to. So it had been 50 years since that had happened. Also, serious candidates emerged from a greater variety of backgrounds than ever before. Again, the historic nature of Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama, and also Sarah Palin, if McCain was elected, potentially being the first woman vice president. So no matter who won, history was going to be made. So what came down to the major issues when you have Barack Obama running against John McCain? Kind of what are the key issues of this election in 2008? So for number 4 here, first up, the McCain camp really wanted to point out that Obama was relatively inexperienced. He had only been a senator for 2 years. He had been a state senator in Illinois before that, but only had been a senator in the federal government for 2 years, while McCain, again, long-time senator, long record of experience in government. McCain also criticized Obama for poor judgment in his choice of associates. There was an issue with his old pastor in Chicago and also a former political associate that were viewed as being radicals. So the McCain camp really tried to point to that as saying that, wasn't necessarily saying Obama had these radical views, but he's associating with these people that do, so that should say something about his character. That was the argument McCain was making in that case. On the other side, critics seriously questioned the qualifications of Sarah Palin, who was McCain's running mate. She, was the governor of Alaska, but was relatively unknown. Besides being governor of Alaska, didn't have a long record of being in public office. And then when she kind of was named as the running mate, in some interviews, she didn't look too great. Like, there was one interview that really kind of became popular because of her response. She was asked about foreign policy and her, just her lack of experience or where she gained her knowledge from for foreign policy, what she was doing to earn knowledge. And she famously said, Alaska, she's from Alaska, she famously said, "I can see Russia from my house." and that was kind of how she answered that question, meaning, who knows what. But so that kind of backfired against her and kind of caused people to question her qualifications. Also, though, Obama was considered to have very little experience in foreign affairs as well. But the Obama camp basically pointed to McCain and said, at the end of George W. Bush's presidency, his policies had started to become pretty unpopular amongst the majority of Americans. We were in a recession. People were kind of tired of the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan. And Obama said, listen, if you elect John McCain, it's just going to be 4 more years of those same failed policies of George W. Bush. Those same policies that everybody's tired of at this point. So that's what he tried to pin on McCain. Again, the war in Iraq was a major issue in this election. By this time, the majority of Americans were like, why are we still there? We've been there long enough. Let's get out of there. And Obama campaigned basically saying, I'm going to get us out of Iraq. And also, we were in the midst of the Great Recession. There was an economic crisis going on, and the Obama camp was blaming George W. Bush's policies, and McCain was trying to back off from those policies because he didn't want to be associated with that. But nonetheless, Obama was kind of really just making that argument, like this is just going to be 4 more years of those policies that led to this crisis. So here's the election map for this election. First off, you can see up here in the popular vote, Obama wins that by about 10 million, just under 10 million votes, 69.5 million to almost 60 million for McCain. All the states in blue are the states that Obama won. States in red, those that McCain won. So 353 electoral votes to 185 for McCain. Pretty clear victory for President Obama here. I ran across this graphic and just thought it was kind of funny. All right. They didn't actually physically fight. that obviously didn't happen. All right. So with Obama winning this election, he becomes the first African-American president of the United States of America. Now, as we talk about this moving forward, remember, even though his presidency ended in 2016, even though that at this point seems like might have been a long time ago, it really, in the grand scheme of things, isn't that long ago. His presidency has just recently ended, and as, again, we talk about things as we get closer and closer to them, it's hard to historically judge them because not all of these things have fully played out yet, right? So it's going to take more time to determine exactly how history is going to view his presidency. Some of the things we can look at and try to evaluate as we do that, though, are here on the board. Some highlights, some lowlights. One of the first things he did in office, and one of his first priorities, was to reform healthcare. And this had been a long time talking point of Democrats, something that they had wanted to do, and he was able to do it, passing the Affordable Care Act, which was also nicknamed Obamacare. So if you ever hear Obamacare, that's just another name for the Affordable Care Act, and vice versa. Same thing. So that was seen as a big victory, but also as a big not victory, because Republicans would really rally against this. And the rollout of the Affordable Care Act really went poorly, especially in the beginning. So Republicans would use that to win elections in the future. So it really was kind of a mixed bag for the Obama administration. All right, so I'll start with the highlights, go through those, and then start to go through the lowlights. Excuse me. So he formally declared the end of the Iraq War in December of 2011. Again, something he campaigned on, something he said he would do. Probably took a couple more years longer than most people thought, but ultimately ends that war in Iraq in 2011. Also helped oversee the killing of Osama bin Laden. That was a pretty big deal, obviously. Osama bin Laden, kind of the ringleader of the September 11th attacks. had been in hiding ever since. And, one thing, that 6 or 7 years of George W. Bush was not able to accomplish was capture and or kill Osama bin Laden, and that ultimately happens under Obama's presidency. He oversaw the bailout of the auto industry. So in the wave of this economic recession, the big three automobile makers in the United States, Ford, Chrysler, and GM, all of those companies were struggling mightily, laying off a lot of workers. And so when that happens, not only is it bad for those companies, obviously, but, if you have to close down plants and lay off a lot of workers, that's bad for the country because, when we're already in a recession and you have more people unable to find jobs or finding themselves unemployed, that's ultimately an issue. So the government helps bail out these auto industry companies, and it mostly was seen as a success. He announced plans to end the war in Afghanistan in 2014. Spoiler alert, doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. Although the war in Afghanistan would not end during his administration at all. In fact, it wouldn't end until 2021. So yeah, it didn't quite go as planned there. He ended. We talked previously about don't ask, don't tell policy in regards to gays in the military, and he formally put an end to that policy. Now, if you are gay, you can serve openly in the military without fear of being dishonorably discharged. He did pass some student loan reform, passed some credit card reforms. He supported same-sex marriage, and he did nominate 3 Supreme Court justices. I've talked about this before with past presidents as well. This is probably the most lasting legacy a president can have, because when you nominate a Supreme Court justice, you are nominating that person to serve that role for life. And so, those justices are going to be on the Supreme Court much, much, much longer in most cases than that person is going to be president. So he nominates Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Merrick Garland. However, I'll talk about this in a later lesson, but Merrick Garland did not receive a confirmation hearing and ultimately did not become a Supreme Court justice. All right, some of the lowlights. Healthcare reform did not go as planned. As I mentioned, Republicans used that to really rally against Democrats. The national debt continued to rise and rise steadily under the Obama presidency. The economic recovery moved along too slowly for the liking of almost everybody. Again, he comes into office during that Great Recession, during the height of that Great Recession, and he's left with that to try to fix. And it was slow rolling process, right? Most people were hoping that it would go much, much quicker than it did. While he was president, Democrats lost control of both the House and the Senate. They had previously controlled both the House and the Senate, and they lost the majorities of both during his presidency, which typically is not a great sign for presidents. Heavily criticized for his escalation of drone attacks in the Middle East, and just kind of the effect that those have had. He originally promised to close Guantanamo Bay, our prisons there, where we could technically hold people suspected of terrorism there for as long as we want, with no legal ramifications. He said he would close that, and he ultimately did not. And he was criticized for his dealings with the Republican Congress and their inability to really work together in any constructive way. Now, obviously, you could criticize the Republican Party the same way for not being willing to work with him, but as the president, as the figurehead, as kind of the one person we look to as the head of our government, he bore the brunt of the majority of that criticism. They had issues over the debt ceiling, over the sequester. There was a government shutdown. There was an issue with Syria, and also with Merrick Garland, like I mentioned before. And I'll go into more details about all of these things in later lessons. So think to yourself. No right or wrong answer to this, but just think to yourself, what do you think? Obama was president for, at this point, I'm guessing the majority of your lives so far. What is history going to remember about President Obama, about his presidency? What is his legacy going to be? What are your thoughts? I'd really be curious to hear that. So just kind of think about that to yourself. All right. So that's the end of this lesson. Let's go through a quiz real quick. For the checkpoints, which were major issues in the 2008 presidential election? Select all that apply. The continuing war in Iraq, was that an issue? You should say yes, it was. McCain's inexperience in foreign affairs, was that an issue? No, he was very experienced, right? The economic crisis, was that an issue? Yes, obviously that was a big issue of that election. A stable, prosperous economy, that was not, because we were not in the midst of a stable and prosperous economy. The qualifications of Sarah Palin, yes, that was heavily questioned. And Obama's limited experience with foreign affairs, that was also questioned. So those are the ones you should be selecting. And on that note, you are dismissed. Have a beautiful day. I'll see you all next week. Actually, I will not see you all next week. Next week is testing week. So I will see you all the week after next week. This is one of my favorite pictures of John McCain. It might seem kind of mean, but he was walking on stage at a debate and kind of tripped. And then this picture just captured that moment. I do this not to make fun of McCain. I have a lot of respect for John McCain. It's just a funny picture. Okay. Have a great weekend, everyone. And good luck on your state test. Crush it. I know you will.